The year was 2257, and the vast expanse of space above Earth was a symphony of stars and darkness, punctuated by the mechanical ballet of orbiting shipyards and satellites. Charles Allen, a seasoned human starship engineer, walked briskly through the corridors of Earth's orbital shipyard, his face set in a determined grimace. The gravity of his summons to Admiral Johnson's office weighed heavily on him. Humanity had spent decades cautiously exploring and colonizing nearby star systems, always with an eye toward the unknown, always wondering when the inevitable moment of first contact would occur. That moment had finally arrived. A Daxamite ship, belonging to a technologically advanced reptilian species known for their competitive nature, now orbited Earth, requesting urgent repairs. The Admiral had tasked Charles with acting as liaison to the Daxamite engineer, a role that could potentially forge an alliance or, if mishandled, lead to catastrophic consequences. As Charles approached the docking bay, his stomach churned with tension. The airlock hissed open, revealing the towering figure of Arlette, the Daxamite chief engineer. With rippling muscles visible beneath his form-fitting silver Anira suit and piercing yellow eyes, Arlette's presence was intimidating. He offered Charles a curt nod in greeting, barely concealing his disdain. "Engineer Charles Allen, I presume?" Arlette's voice rumbled deep and resonant. "Yes, and welcome to Earth Station Alpha. I'm here to assist with your repairs," Charles responded, extending his hand in a gesture of goodwill which Arlette promptly ignored, turning instead to stride toward his damaged ship. As they walked, Arlette's arrogance was palpable. "I doubt there will be much you can do to assist. Daxamite engineering is the most advanced in the known galaxy. Our ships are faster, stronger and superior in every way to your primitive crafts." Biting his tongue, Charles fought the urge to retort, choosing instead a diplomatic reply. "I'm sure your technology is impressive, but humanity has made significant strides too. Perhaps we can learn from each other." Arlette snorted derisively, skepticism etched across his features. They reached the damaged area of the ship, a gaping hole with twisted metal and frayed wiring exposed. Charles began to scan the damage, and despite Arlette's boasts, he noticed that Daxamite technology shared similarities with human designs, some even appearing less advanced than claimed. The Daxamite frowned at a flickering holographic display, beginning to realize the limitations of his ship's technology. Charles observed silently, choosing not to bruise the alien's ego further by pointing out that humanity had solved similar issues years ago. Focusing on the task at hand, Charles suggested, "Looks like you've got a ruptured power conduit here. We'll need to bypass it and reroute power through the secondary systems." Arlette growled in frustration as his display glitched again. Yes, I see that. Let's get on with it." As they worked together over the following days, their initial friction gave way to a grudging respect. One evening, while discussing warp drive calibration over coffee, an alarm abruptly shattered the peace. Red lights flashed, and a robotic voice announced, "Alert! Unknown vessel approaching Earth. All personnel to battle stations." Coffee forgotten, Charles raced to the nearest monitor, his heart pounding. A massive ship, 10 times the size of the largest human vessels, was heading straight for Earth. Admiral Johnson's voice crackled through the comm. "Allen, we've got a situation. That ship isn't responding to hails, and our scans show it's armed to the teeth. Lock down the Daxamite ship and get to the observation deck pronto. We may be in for a fight." "Understood, Admiral," Charles replied, his mouth dry. Turning to Arlette, who had also risen, he said, "We need to secure your ship and get topside. Looks like we've got company, and not the friendly kind." Arlette hissed softly, skepticism in his voice. "Your Admiral seems to think your ships stand a chance against that behemoth. I find that hard to believe." "Don't underestimate us, Arlette. Humanity has a few tricks up our sleeve." As they reached the observation deck, the human fleet was already mobilizing, with the HMS Titan, a powerhouse of human military engineering, at the forefront, ready to face the oncoming threat. Arlette's eyes widened in disbelief, perhaps realizing that humans might have built something beyond his expectations. The observation deck offered a panoramic view of space, now dominated by the imposing silhouette of the incoming enemy ship. The HMS Titan, the pride of the human fleet, stood at the forefront, its engines glowing a fierce blue-white as it prepared to meet the unknown threat head-on. Beside Charles, Arlett watched, his yellow eyes wide with a mixture of shock and disbelief. "How could humans have built such a ship?" Arlett muttered under his breath, his voice a blend of awe and incredulity. Charles, watching the Titan take the lead, felt a swell of pride. Everything about her, the weapons, the shields, the engines, it's all built on decades of research and hard-won experience. We've poured our blood, sweat, and tears into making her the best damn ship in the galaxy. Arlett regarded the Titan with newfound respect, his head cocked to the side. Impressive. I had not realized humans had advanced so far in such a short time. As the enemy ship drew closer, its massive size becoming even more apparent, tension mounted on the observation deck. The human fleet, an array of sleek and powerful ships, aligned themselves in a defensive formation around the Titan, their readiness palpable in the silent void of space. Suddenly, the calm was shattered as the unknown vessel opened fire. Lances of searing energy cut across the cosmos, aimed directly at the human ships. The Titan's shields flared to life, absorbing the brunt of the initial assault. The crew on the observation deck braced themselves, feeling the ship shudder under the impact. Charles gripped the railing tightly, his eyes fixed on the battle unfolding before him. "Hold steady," he whispered to himself and to the crew around him, as if his words could bolster the Titan's defenses. The human fleet responded in kind, unleashing a barrage of return fire. The Titan, central to the effort, coordinated the attack, its advanced weapons systems slicing through the enemy's defenses. Around her, the smaller ships added their firepower, creating a relentless assault that seemed to stagger the larger ship. Arlett watched in amazement as the coordinated human attack began to take effect. Such power and coordination. I had not thought humans capable of such feats, he admitted, his tone mixed with respect and a hint of fear. Charles allowed himself a small, grim smile. We're a resilient bunch. We adapt, we innovate, we overcome. It's what we do. As the battle raged, the enemy ship's return fire grew erratic, its movements sluggish, as if it were beginning to falter under the human onslaught. Cheers broke out intermittently among the human crew as they saw their efforts bearing fruit, the enemy shields flickering and failing. Finally, with a decisive volley from the Titan, the enemy vessel's defenses collapsed entirely. Damaged and vulnerable, it began a slow retreat, limping away into the depths of space. The observation deck erupted in cheers and applause. Humanity had stood its ground against a formidable opponent and prevailed. Arlett turned to Charles, his expression somber but with a trace of admiration. "I was wrong about your species, Charles Allen. There is much my people could learn from yours. Your technology, your tactics, your sheer determination. It is truly remarkable." Charles clapped Arlett on the shoulder, a gesture of camaraderie that seemed to bridge the gap between their species. "We've both got a lot to learn from each other, Arlett. This is just the beginning." As they watched the victorious fleet returning to formation, Charles couldn't help but feel a sense of hope for the future. Humanity had just taken its first step onto a much larger stage, and with allies like the Daxamites at their side, there was no limit to what they could achieve. The battle was over, but the adventure was just beginning, and Charles was ready for whatever the galaxy had in store. In the aftermath of the battle, the HMS Titan and the rest of the human fleet began repairs while still in orbit around Earth. The victorious return was celebrated, but a solemn undertone lingered among the crews. There was much work to be done, and the unknown threats loomed larger than ever. Charles Allen, now a celebrated figure among his peers for his role in the defense of Earth, found himself more involved in the diplomatic efforts that followed. The unexpected victory had opened a new door, the possibility of forming an alliance with the Daxamites, whose respect for human capabilities had markedly increased after witnessing their technological prowess and tactical acumen. Arlett, the Daxamite chief engineer, spent more time on Earth, working closely with Charles and other human engineers to exchange knowledge and technology. Their joint efforts centered around enhancing defensive measures and integrating Daxamite technology with human systems, a task that proved both challenging and rewarding. One afternoon, as they reviewed the schematics of a new hybrid engine design in the engineering bay, Arlette spoke candidly. Your people's resilience in battle was impressive, Charles. I admit my initial views were misguided. Charles smiled, adjusting the holographic display to show a more detailed view of the engine integration. We all have our misconceptions. What matters is that we're learning from each other now. The collaboration wasn't without its setbacks. Cultural differences and misunderstandings occasionally disrupted progress. However, the mutual desire for a stronger defense against potential future threats helped smooth over any friction. Gradually, the partnership between humans and Daxamites grew stronger, setting a foundation for a formal alliance. Meanwhile, Admiral Johnson initiated diplomatic talks with other neighboring star systems, leveraging the recent show of strength as a catalyst for broader cooperation. The talks were held on the newly christened Unity Station, orbiting at the Lagrange point between Earth and the Moon, symbolizing a new era of interstellar diplomacy. Charles was often called upon to participate in these discussions, not only as an engineer but also as a representative of Earth's military capabilities. His insights into the integration of alien technologies became invaluable, and his first-hand experience with Daxamite culture bridged many gaps in understanding. One evening, during a recess in the diplomatic sessions, Charles and Arlette took a moment to observe Earth from Unity Station's observation deck. The blue and green planet below was serene, a stark contrast to the complexities of interstellar politics and warfare. Seeing Earth like this, peaceful, it's hard to imagine why anyone would choose conflict, Arlette remarked, his gaze fixed on the planet. Charles nodded in agreement. Yet, it's the same view that reminds us what we're working to protect. Not just Earth, but all our homes, across the stars. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alert. The station's communication system crackled to life, and an urgent message from Admiral Johnson summoned them to the command center. We have a situation. Scouts have detected a fleet assembling near the Oort cloud. It's massive. Preliminary scans suggest it's not just one race, but a coalition. They haven't made hostile moves yet, but their intentions are unclear. As they hurried to the command center, the weight of command and responsibility settled once again on Charles's shoulders. This new development would test the strength of the alliances they were trying to build. It wasn't just about technology and firepower anymore. It was about uniting disparate peoples under a common cause. In the command center, maps and live feeds from scout ships filled the screens. The coalition fleet was indeed impressive, a mingling of various ship designs and technologies. We need to show that we are not just defending our own territories, but are also willing to stand as a united front, Admiral Johnson declared, addressing the gathered representatives of the allied species. The room filled with a mix of voices, each delegate expressing their concerns and support. Charles took a deep breath, ready to contribute to the strategic planning. This was a pivotal moment, not only for Earth but for the potential unity of multiple worlds. If they could stand together now, they could establish a federation not just for defense, but for the prosperity of all their civilizations. As the coalition fleet loomed large near the Oort cloud, Unity Station became the heart of frenzied activity. Delegates from various star systems gathered, their voices a cacophony of concern and determination in the command center. Charles and Arlette worked alongside Admiral Johnson, navigating the delicate intricacies of interstellar diplomacy while preparing for potential conflict. Charles was acutely aware of the significance of these discussions. The unity shown here could well determine the future of peaceful coexistence in the galaxy. He spent long hours poring over tactical simulations and technological integrations, ensuring that the Allied fleets could operate seamlessly in case diplomacy failed. Meanwhile, Arlette had become something of a spokesperson for the Daxamite people, advocating for a united front against the coalition. His transformation from a skeptical engineer to a diplomatic envoy was remarkable, and his unique insights into the coalition races, some of whom were distant relatives of the Daxamites, proved invaluable. Their motives are not entirely aggressive, Arlette explained during a strategic meeting. Many are driven by fear, manipulated by a few power-hungry leaders. If we can sow doubt among their ranks about the wisdom of their path, we might avoid bloodshed. Admiral Johnson considered this. Your insight gives us an advantage, Arlet. We'll prepare for peace but plan for war. Charles, let's make sure our tech is up to par. Charles nodded, returning to his work with renewed vigor. The integration of Daxamite shielding technology with human weapon systems had resulted in a new class of battleships that were more robust and versatile. This technological melding symbolized the burgeoning alliance, a blend of ideas and strengths greater than the sum of its parts. As preparations progressed, a small contingent led by Charles and Arlet was tasked with a covert mission, to approach the Coalition fleet under a banner of truce. Their ship, the HMS Concord, was equipped with the latest hybrid technology, designed to withstand and evade if negotiations turned sour. The journey to the edge of the Oort cloud was tense. As they neared the Coalition fleet, the sheer size of the assembled ships was daunting. Hundreds of vessels, some bristling with weaponry, others sleek and evasive, floated in the cold darkness of space. Charles stood beside Arlet on the bridge of the Concorde, watching the approaching ships. "No matter what happens, we've made leaps that were unimaginable just months ago," he said, trying to buoy his own spirits as much as those of his crew. Arlet nodded solemnly. "Whatever comes, we face it together. That unity is our true strength." Their ship was hailed as they approached the Coalition's perimeter. A deep, resonating voice filled the bridge. "State your intentions," demanded the Coalition commander, his tone suspicious yet curious. "We come seeking dialogue, not conflict," Charles responded firmly. "We represent a united group of star systems ready to discuss peace. We believe there is much to be gained from cooperation rather than war." There was a pause, the silence stretching thin. Then the voice replied, "Proceed to these coordinates. Our council will meet with you. But be warned, any sign of treachery will be met with immediate retaliation." The coordinates were set, and the HMS Concorde slowly made its way into the heart of the Coalition fleet. The crew was on high alert, every sensor and shield at maximum readiness. As they docked at the designated meeting point, a massive station that seemed cobbled together from various technologies, Charles and Arlet prepared to disembark. They were met by an escort of heavily armed guards, who led them through a series of stark corridors to a large assembly room. Inside, representatives of the Coalition's races were already seated, a diverse group, some with features mildly reminiscent of the Daxamites, others utterly alien. Charles took a deep breath, stepping forward to address the gathering. "Ladies and gentlemen, beings of the Coalition," he began, his voice steady despite the tension. "We are here not as conquerors, but as equals, seeking to build a future where all our peoples can thrive. Let us find common ground, not through the sights of our weapons, but through the promise of mutual prosperity and respect." The talks that ensued were fraught with tension, but also filled with cautious optimism. As Charles and Arlet navigated the complex dynamics of the meeting, they were aware that the eyes of many worlds were upon them, all waiting to see if this unprecedented gathering could indeed pave the way for peace. The assembly room was charged with an electric mix of skepticism and hope as Charles addressed the diverse coalition. Each representative, encased in their unique cultural garb and distinct physical features, listened intently, weighing every word. The challenge was monumental, but the potential for a groundbreaking alliance spurred Charles and Arlet onward. After the initial introductions and formalities, the negotiations began in earnest. Charles, leveraging his engineering background, proposed several collaborative projects that emphasized technology exchange and joint exploration missions as foundational elements for trust building. Arlet supplemented these proposals with insights into strategic defense alignments, advocating for a united front against common external threats, which resonated with many in the room. Meanwhile, back on Earth and across Allied territories, news of the ongoing negotiations was met with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Admiral Johnson coordinated closely with planetary defense commanders, keeping forces on standby while hoping for a diplomatic victory. Unity Station buzzed with activity as analysts and diplomats worked around the clock, providing Charles with real-time data and advice. The negotiations stretched over several days, with sessions often running late into the station's artificial night. During these grueling hours, Charles and Arlette faced numerous challenges, from language barriers to deep-seated prejudices. However, each obstacle overcome seemed to slowly stitch the fabric of a potential federation tighter. In one pivotal session, a breakthrough came when a coalition member, representing a race known for their mining expertise, expressed interest in human environmental technologies. They proposed an exchange program that would allow them to rehabilitate planets in their system, severely impacted by overmining. Charles seized on this, expanding the offer into a comprehensive environmental recovery initiative that could be applied galaxy-wide, showcasing the tangible benefits of cooperation. As the coalition warmed to the ideas presented, Arlette took the floor, his voice resonant and more confident than ever. "We have seen what conflicts can bring: destruction, sorrow, loss. Now we have a chance to build something greater together. Not just alliances, but friendships. Not just treaties, but true understanding." His words, translated into dozens of languages, seemed to resonate deeply, echoing around the room and beyond, carried over live feeds to countless viewers across the galaxy. As the final day of negotiations dawned, Charles and Arlette prepared a comprehensive proposal, backed by data, testimonials, and a framework for the first phase of the Federation. They presented it to the Assembly, outlining the structural, economic, and technological benefits of a united coalition. The debate that followed was intense. Each representative took their turn to voice concerns, suggest amendments, and slowly, a consensus began to emerge. The proposal was robust, offering enough flexibility to accommodate various cultural norms and political structures, yet firm in its principles of mutual defense and prosperity. When the vote was finally called, the tension was palpable. One by one, the representatives cast their votes, the tally displayed for all to see. As the final vote was cast, a moment of silence fell over the room. Then, as the result flashed on the screen, approval by an overwhelming majority, cheers and applause broke out, not just in the assembly room, but across many worlds watching the broadcast. Admiral Johnson, watching from Unity Station, allowed himself a rare smile. "Well done, Charles Arlette. You've done more than negotiate peace. You've laid the foundation for a new era." The newly formed Galactic Federation was not just a military or economic alliance, but a commitment to shared values and mutual growth. The news was greeted with celebrations across human and allied planets, and even in some corners of the Coalition's territories. As the assembly adjourned, Charles and Arlette stood together, looking out at the stars from the station's viewing deck. "It's just the beginning, isn't it?" Charles asked, a reflective tone in his voice. Arlette nodded, his eyes on the infinite stretch of space. "Yes, the real work starts now. Building trust, implementing policies, ensuring we keep the promises made today." Both knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but for now, they allowed themselves to savor the victory, the promise of peace, and the dawn of a new chapter in galactic history. They had crossed a critical threshold, not just for their people, but for the galaxy at large. The adventure was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning.